Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to season 3 of Chaotic Crime. I am not sure how the hell we made it here, but we have made it all the way to season 3 and all the way to 2026, which is actually unbelievable. So happy New Year's, Merry Christmas. I know I'm very late on the scale, but I always say better late than never. I hope that everybody had a little bit of a break over the Christmas period and got to spend some time with their loved ones, because that's really what it's all about, right? I did take a little bit of time off, and we've been backlogging our serial cases because I didn't forget. Don't worry. I never leave anyone astray. So I've definitely been backlogging those. So I'm pretty sure we'd be coming into this towards the end of January, which is very exciting. So happy first month of 2026, everybody. I hope we've all had a smashing month. And I hope we're all buckled up and strapped in and ready for another case. Because today's case is actually something a little bit different. I mean, it's not different in the regard that it's still a devastating story, but this is a different kind of case because it is a case that changed everything. So for season 3, I'm going to be bringing you cases that changed everything. That is literally the series of this month. And it's basically all about cases that the world turned around and said, okay, this is never happening again. We're going to change systems. We're going to put new structures in place to ensure that we've got coverage if these situations do arise again. Sorry, lots of just then. But yes, I'm very excited to share them because I also think it's things that we probably overlook or take for granted having, if that makes sense. Like they're things that we couldn't imagine a world without. So with that being said, I think I've jibber-jabbed and yibber-yabbed, jibber-jab, yibber-yabbed enough. So let's get into today's episode. So today we're not just covering a case. This is more of a turning point than anything else. It's basically a line in the sand where the world said never, ever again. And it all started with one little girl, Amber Hagerman. So please grab your drink, get comfy, get cozy. If you have someone nearby, feel free to give them a hug and buckle up, because today we're going to be talking about the Amber Alert case. We're going to be talking about a time before the Amber Alert ever existed. Okay, so I'm going to jump in really quickly and just explain briefly what an Amber Alert is, because in Australia, we don't necessarily have the same thing as an Amber Alert. So the Amber Alert is basically an emergency public alert system that they use within the United States of America. Now, they use this when a child is believed to have been abducted or is in immediate danger. Now, it's not used for every single missing child case, but it's used within a strict criteria. So the authorities must believe that a child has been abducted and not just missing. That the child is in immediate danger, meaning serious harm or potentially death. And there is also descriptive information that could help the public locate the child. So this is things like a suspect, a location, a vehicle, and the child must be under 18 years old. So when this Amber Alert is actually triggered, it's pushed out to all emergency phone notifications, TV and radio interruptions, highway roadway signs, social media and news platforms. Now, the idea is simple but powerful. Get millions of eyes looking immediately. Now, within Australia, we actually do have an Amber Alert as well, but it's kind of used a little bit differently. Now, Europe doesn't have like an Amber Alert one banner, but many sort of use Amber Alert programs similar to the US. So they're all sort of very similar programs. So essentially, all these countries saw the US starting to use the Amber Alert or enforcing, bringing on the Amber Alert. So everybody has inherited their own version of it. That's just a little bit of history for you guys so that we at least know what we're talking about before we crack into today's case. Now, before we completely rip in and start talking about the systems and the legislation and the alerts, it's really important that we talk about Amber herself, because unfortunately, Amber Hagerman was not a headline. She wasn't a symbol yet, and she wasn't a warning. She was just a 9-year-old kid having a regular day. So all of this started January 13th, 1996 in Arlington, Texas. Now, it was the middle of the afternoon and pretty bright daylight. So Amber lived in a pretty normal neighborhood, a pretty standard suburban neighborhood, like the kind of neighborhood that kids could ride their bikes and parents didn't have to necessarily stand outside. They could literally watch from their windows. Now, she had spent the day at her grandparents' house with her younger brother, Ricky. So Ricky and Amber were quite close as siblings. They used to ride their bikes together all the time. They were typical siblings, so they did fight, but they'd often be laughing it out 5 minutes later. So that afternoon in particular, Amber and Ricky did exactly what kids had done 1,000 times before. They grabbed their bikes, and Amber's bike was actually a bright pink bike. They rode down the street just outside of their grandparents' house, not miles away and not anywhere remote, right there. Now, these facts are really important because a lot of people picture danger as something far away or something where a kid's done the wrong thing, right? Gone too far across the line, gone somewhere they shouldn't have. I think when we picture danger, that's what we picture. So in this case, I think it's really important for us to understand that Amber was doing everything right. This was something that they had literally done 1,000 times. So at around 3:10 p.m., an adult man was driving through the neighborhood when he noticed something that didn't sit quite right. He saw a man pull up in a dark pickup truck alongside Amber. Now, at first, it just looked like Amber and this man were having a conversation, and then suddenly it didn't look like that at all. The man got out, grabbed Amber, and dragged her off of her bike. She screamed, fought, and unfortunately her younger brother Ricky had to stand by and watch this all happen. So it's important to note that Ricky at this time was only about 5 years old, so he couldn't stop it even if he wanted to. He didn't understand what he was even seeing at that time. The man shoved Amber into the truck and sped away. And just like that, in seconds, she was gone. So Ricky, at this point, sprinted home. Now he was crying and terrified and trying to explain something no child should ever have to explain. Amber's gone. She was taken. So suddenly the police were called immediately. Now I want to note it was literally within minutes the officers arrived on the scene. So here's where we get to the part of the case that sucks the most. Is at the time that Amber was abducted, there was no alert in place for this sort of situation. So at this point, the only people that were actually out looking for Amber were the police and a handful of neighbours. So I just want us to imagine that. We have a child that is literally abducted in broad daylight, and the entire city carries on unaware of what's happened. So police scoured the neighbourhood. They spoke to witnesses, they put out descriptions, but by the time the gravity of the situation had set in, the truck was already long gone. And I think that's the thing that really haunts this case. It was that Amber wasn't taken in the middle of the night. She was taken on a bike ride she had probably done 100 times before, on a day that started like any other in the middle of the day. So this wasn't actually failure of love. It wasn't negligence. This wasn't someone doing the wrong thing. This was a system that didn't even exist yet. So it was 4 days after Amber was taken on January 17th, 1996. A man called Gary Dean was out walking his dog near a drainage canal behind an apartment complex in North Arlington. Now, this wasn't a particularly remote spot. It was actually a fairly ordinary suburban area. It was passed by all the time by people. It wasn't closed off, so it wasn't hidden at all. Now, he looked down the canal and saw something that made him stop in his tracks. At first, he actually thought he was looking at a large doll, but he wasn't. Unfortunately, what he was looking at was the body of Amber Hagerman. Her body had been dumped in shallow water and her clothes were gone except for one singular sock. The scene had confirmed what everybody feared, but the details also revealed something police had not really expected. So the autopsy actually revealed 3 critical details. Amber had actually been kept alive for at least 2 days after she was abducted, meaning someone had her and someone had time. She had been beaten quite brutally, but her cause of death was actually due to her throat being slashed. One of the most personal, violent manners of killing a child. Oh, it's happening again. I'm doing the shoulder thing, guys, don't worry. I'm just rolling my shoulders. I think that's going to be the new thing for all future seasons to come, is a little bit of detox meditation, relax meditation, whatever the hell it is, to get us through the rest of these episodes, because Like I always say, I don't know why I bring cases that make me so mad, but I feel as though the ones that make me this mad are generally the ones that carry the most depth. Not to say that the other ones don't, because that just feels like it feels like I'm singling out to like certain ones when I think they're all every case is important. Every victim is important. I wish I had all the time in the world to just share everyone's stories. I really do. But unfortunately, I have a full-time job on top of this. So, okay, I've deflected now. I think we've all calmed down and we probably should carry on. Now, I think one of the biggest parts in this case that does really crush me is the fact that Amber was kept alive for 2 days afterwards. This just makes me so angry because the abductor felt as though he had time. And that is the most aggravating part of this case, is that we didn't have systems in place. So we were literally allowing these abductors to feel as though they had enough time to keep someone for 2 days. And not even someone in this case. I mean, this is a child, a 9-year-old girl. So that fact alone, the fact she was kept for 2 days, everything else I just said, it literally means that someone saw something, someone heard something, someone drove past the right place at the wrong time but didn't know that they were witnessing a kidnapping in progress. And if the community had actually been alerted instantly, if people had known to look out for a black pickup truck, a 9-year-old girl, a child screaming, it means that there's a chance, a tiny chance, a grain of hope that she might have been found before those 2 days were up. So here's the part that a lot of people have either forgotten about this case if they know, or don't know because they don't know this case. It is still unsolved today. So as of 2025, it was nearly 30 years since Amber's abduction, and nearly 30 years since her killer still remains unidentified. No charges, no suspects strong enough to pursue, no suspects strong enough to prosecute, nothing concrete. There is still a $75,000 reward for information on Amber's case. Now, there have been multiple persons of interest over the years, but nothing has ever been confirmed. And I think Amber's case is truly one of those cases that the pain is just never going to fade. It's not going to fade for her family. It's not going to fade for the community. And honestly, not for anyone who learns the full story. Now, this case becomes even more heartbreaking once you hear what Amber's mum actually said, because that's where the Amber Alert actually begins. Okay, so here is the real heart of this whole system. And honestly, it didn't come from any government meetings or law enforcement policy. It came from a mum who refused to shut the fuck up. And I love that. I just got full body chills, and there's a good full body chill. I've got tears in my eyes. As a child that, like, I don't know what it's like to have a mum love a child that much. My mother did not love me that much, I can tell you. So Amber at least really won the jackpot in terms of good mums. So after Amber's body was found, Donna Norris, who was Amber's mum, didn't give time to grieve quietly. She didn't get any privacy and she didn't get any space, purely because she couldn't. Her daughter had been taken in broad daylight, off a normal suburban street where kids rode bikes every single day. And there was still absolutely no system to warn the public or to track a suspect. Now, she didn't have that sort of rage where she was like throwing things and losing her argument. She just had a very, very focused rage, an internal rage, an inner burn to make a change and to force people to listen to her. One of the main things that she kept saying is that Amber might still be alive if people had actually known to look. And I think we can all agree that that was not a dramatic statement. That is literally the truth, the fact of the matter. So at the time that Donna was protesting for change, the police literally had fuck all evidence. They had one witness, which was the older man who had actually witnessed Amber being pulled off her bike. They knew the pickup truck had sped away, and they knew the direction in which that truck went. Yet there was no statewide broadcast such as, a little girl has just been abducted. Here's the vehicle. Stop what you're doing and have a look around. And I'm not knocking police, because they literally done the best they could with what they had. But the argument is what they had was not enough. So in the days after Amber's death, Donna began giving interviews. radio, local TV, newspaper, all because she needed people to understand. Amber didn't die instantly. Amber didn't die that same night. Amber was alive for 2 days after she was abducted. That means that was 2 entire days where someone could have seen something. A car, a man, a location, anything, something. And truthfully, you can hear the pain in every early interview. But in these interviews, she is truly talking like a mother that did not want any other parent to ever stand where she was standing. In some of these interviews, she said, "We need a warning system, something that tells the public the second a child is taken." Now, this wasn't even called the Amber Alert yet. She just wanted anything to be implemented. Now, I want to be clear when I say that the Amber Alert didn't come from the government in any shape or form. This was truly a community-based push. It actually started as a community idea that snowballed. So the snowball actually went to a local Dallas DJ named Kimberly James, and she had heard Donna speak on the idea of having an alert system, and she went to air with it. Why don't we use an emergency broadcast system for the abducted children? And once this aired, listeners immediately dialed in. Donations started, people wrote letters to law enforcement. Parents wanted it. Teachers wanted it. Random everyday Americans wanted it. Everybody wanted it. Now, there was actually another grieving parent in this case, Richard. He had actually lost his own daughter years earlier in an abduction and a murder. When he heard Donna crying on an interview, he felt like he was reliving his own worst nightmare all over again. He reached out privately and said, "I know what this feels like, and I am going to help you." And Richard really did. He started contacting police departments, radio networks, local governments, and state representatives. He told them the exact same thing that Donna did. Amber died because the public didn't get information in time. This wasn't 2 people anymore. It was becoming an entire movement. So the local police in Arlington were actually open to the idea. They'd seen how frustrated their community was. They'd also seen firsthand how limited their tools were at the time. So they went on to start having meetings with broadcasters, public safety officials, emergency alert system operators to figure out exactly what a child alert system would even look like. And it was really messy at first because there were no templates in place, there were no protocols, and no examples from any other countries. This wasn't like oh yeah, let's draft a bill. It was literally a group of parents, cops, radio people, and community members sitting around tables trying to create something out of nothing. But slowly, this thing really started to take shape. Now, let's be really clear and put emphasis on the fact that so much of this started with a mum who refused to let her daughter's death be meaningless. And it was also about a community that actually fucking listened. And of course, it was about a grieving father who stepped in because he couldn't watch another family go through what he had and what Donna had. So what really made the Amber Alert possible was human beings showing up for each other. Okay, I've gotten soppy. Sorry, guys. It's happened again. I've been getting really emotional when I'm sharing these cases. Can you give me a second? So I had to take a sip of my coffee and just regroup for a second there. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the sequence in which the Amber Alert took place because it was actually quite a messy process. It wasn't boom, 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 boom. Like I said, it was messy. It was slow. It took a lot of time. So like I said, one of the first people that pushed this really hard was, of course, the grieving parents, but it was the local radio. So at the time, the local radio host, who we have already mentioned, was DJ Kimberly Jones. So that was the first step in which this sort of really started to get some good traction. Now from there were 2 men within law enforcement that really did put a big push on this. And that push was probably because they seen their community drowning. So that was Sergeant Jeff Paris and Lieutenant David Holly. Now, these 2 officers were actually the first to say, okay, hang on, this is actually doable. Not only is this a good idea, but why aren't we doing this already? So from there, they contacted broadcasters and the broadcasters said yes. That one conversation became the backbone of this system. Now, I know you guys do recall me talking about the other grieving parent, Richard. Now, his full name was Richard Hogue. and his daughter passed away a few years before. She was abducted and murdered, very similar to Amber. Now, he was the one who helped organize the early community meetings. He had pulled contact lists, pressured officials, and he was basically the human bulldozer that pushed the idea through, because without Donna and without Richard, this actually doesn't happen. So the very first version of the Amber Alert was launched in Dallas-Fort Worth area. Now, it had very strict rules, immediate public alerts, a focus on stranger abductions, and real-time broadcasting. So at this point, it wasn't digital and it wasn't high-tech. It was literally pen to paper and, of course, phone calls. But at the time, it worked. So this was the very first Amber Alert plan. Okay, so this part's really important, because within only a few months of launching, the very first child was saved because of the Amber Plan. A truck driver had heard this alert, recognized the car, and called the police immediately. And with all of that, he had managed to save a kidnapped teenage girl. And that was honestly really it. Once one child was saved, the argument was completely over. Every state wanted one. So the system grew state by state and not in a federal sort of manner. The way I said that. It's getting towards the end of the episode and I start to get all like delirious with the amount of talking I've just done. So unfortunately, at the time that it was growing state by state, funding was still unclear. Not a single agency owned the idea, and there was and for some reason there was still political hesitation. But again, with the public pressure that was forcing the issue, by 2002, every state had its own version of the Amber Alert. So then, by 2003, the US passed federal legislation making Amber Alerts a national system. National system. Sorry, I felt like I said that weird. See, it's happening. Stuttering. So with this, it became the emergency highway signs, interrupting TV broadcasts, phone notifications, wireless push alerts, social media systems, law enforcement coordination, and national standards. All because one 9-year-old girl was abducted from her bike, and one mother just didn't give up. And one quick fact that I know often confuses people, and really did confuse me when I first started looking into this case, but Amber Alert doesn't actually stand for Amber Hagerman specifically herself. It stands for America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response. But everyone knows and acknowledges the real Amber behind it. Now today, there are more than 20 countries using Amber-style systems such as Canada, Australia, the UK, Ireland, Mexico, France, Germany, and the Netherlands. So as of today, as in 2025, 2026, the Amber Alert uses SMS blasts, push notifications, highway billboards, TV interruptions, radio cut-ins, digital road signs, social media instant disruptions, geo-targeting, statewide plus national coordination, wireless emergency alerts, meaning that these are notifications straight to your phone, and international treaties. And here's the thing. If you live in the US and your phone is screaming at 3 o'clock in the morning, I want you to try to remember that that's Amber's legacy. Because of this alert, children have been found in restaurants, gas stations, cars on highways, motels, airports, public bathrooms, parking lots, because every day people saw the alert and thought, wait, that looks like the car. Now, this part really fucking matters. Because of the Amber Alert system and this protocol that we were able to put into place, over 1,200 children were recovered in the US alone, thousands more through sister programs. Every single one of those children represent a family that didn't have to go through what the Hagermans did. Now, this is the part that I really fucking struggle with, because the irony is often brutal. The Amber Alert has saved thousands of children, but it did not save Amber. And that particular truth has shaped every single interview that Donna has ever given. She once said in an interview that Amber saved so many other children. So that's the reason I keep going. And I mean, Donna really, really meant that. She's met with governors, testified in hearings, done hundreds of interviews, worked with police chiefs, partnered with missing children organizations, showed up for families that she didn't even know, and used her grief like fuel. She worked until this system existed in every US state. She worked until other countries adopted it. She worked until Amber's name meant protection and not tragedy. And I really think that's one of the most powerful parts in this story and in this case, is that she turned one of the most painful and worst moments in her life and changed the entire world. So unfortunately, we still don't know who killed Amber Hagerman. As of the current status of 2025, what we do know is that her killer has still never been identified. DNA has never been matched, and suspects were questioned but cleared. Now, the FBI have taken over this case and they are treating it as though it was a likely local offender, a crime of opportunity, someone familiar with the area, or someone who took a huge risk and happened to get away with it. Now, as of 2025, they do believe the offender to be between 20 and 40. He drove a black pickup truck, was confident approaching children, and may have continued to offend after Amber and even before. Now, he might even still be alive today. Now, we're hoping with all the new forensic techniques and technologies in place that maybe this case could still break open, even 29 years later. And honestly, like we've heard before, cases like this and older than this have been solved. So there is absolutely always still hope. Now, Donna, Amber's mum, still attends missing children events regularly. She still advocates for family support. She still speaks at the annual Amber Hagerman Day. She's still supporting legal reform and connecting with new families of missing children. And while Donna is older now and a bit more soft-spoken, she still carries Amber everywhere she goes. In 2024, she did an interview saying, "I still believe her case will be solved. Someone out there has to know something." And I think she meant every word. Now, Amber's brother Ricky is actually a full-grown adult now with kids of his own. He continues to do his part to advocate for his sister. The family remains completely and totally united and vocal in every way. Every January, the community gathers to honour Amber. Amber would have been 35 years old this year, and I think that hits us hard. So here's the thing, I think, in this case, and I hope you guys enjoyed a little bit of a different case. I really feel like this is a case with meaning. I'm sorry if my voice has started to crack as well. I think that's from like tearing up. This one really, like, they obviously hit hard, but this one really hits hard. Because I know I said at the start, and I'm going to end with it as well, this case really was a turning point. Now, we know that the Amber Alert didn't save Amber, but it has saved thousands of children who would have been Amber. And I think that really, really has to mean something. That has to matter. This alert is Amber's name doing exactly what Donna has begged for, saving someone else's child. So thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Chaotic Crime. I'm not going to yib and yab and blib and blab too much at the end of this episode today. I just want you guys to look after yourselves. Go and hug someone you love. And if you ever see an Amber Alert, please don't ignore it. This alert exists because a little girl didn't make it home. So that is it from me today, my loves. Please stay safe, stay kind, and I'll see you next episode.